This is the Seahawkers podcast, episode 411. I'm Brandon Schultz of the Military Seahawkers, and joining me, my good buddy and Montana Seahawker, Adam Emmert.
Dude, this is a little weird. We have a little Freaky Friday role reversal going on here. Brandon joined us from the road over in Minnesota, and he's got his road game together here, guys. It's making me feel a little inadequate for all the years of where I've cobbled it together. He's crushing it yet again. Good work, my buddy.
See, the funny thing is, too, is that Adam, that's not the first time I heard him break out the Minnesota with the Fargo accent. I think that's how he has to say it every time.
Yeah, sure. You betcha. Mm-hmm.
You watch Fargo like 3 times.
No, I got
an impressionable...
family from North Dakota there, so it's a little Canadian, a little North Dakota, all together there, you know?
Yeah, you've got it down pretty well.
Yeah, it's in the family, man. It's in the genes. Can't shake it.
Oh, man. Well, I can't shake the fact that here we are in the preseason doing another preseason recap show going into the final week of the Seahawks preseason. It's about this time every year where it's like, okay, let's get to regular season football. We got to see the starters out there. We got to see Geno Smith sling it around a little bit. A few of the guys on defense. It wasn't a full complement on defense, but we kind of, I think, got to see our starting offensive line out there in front of Geno and even in front of Drew Lock for a little bit too. And it made for at least an interesting preseason game. Yeah,
there was some interesting things that came about throughout the game. Geno looked fine, did just regular quarterback things. I'm good with that. The run game, Charbonnet, he had that one big run and looked kind of solid overall. Kind of like we had talked about when he was drafted, a professional looking running back. Now, I still don't think that he's as explosive as K9, but he's not supposed to be. That's not his role either. So that was cool. And then a couple wide receivers making some big plays, and it all came together for yet another win. And we continue to be undefeated this season, which I expect to keep going all the way through the Super Bowl.
Undefeated in the preseason just to get the preseason practice in, then undefeated in the regular season and undefeated in the postseason. How hard is it?
I mean, if they don't do it this year, next year, and the year after that, back to back to back, like Pete did at SC, 3 years without a loss, I'm going to be disappointed.
Exactly. See, I know that you listened to Richard Sherman's interview with Pete Carroll based on that comment right there, because Pete was bragging about the fact that they went undefeated for 3 straight years.
That's right. That's right. And another thing that he was bragging about is guys making a leap from the first year to the second year. The protector Phil, he texted me the other day and he's like, Pete Carroll said, it's not a sophomore slump, it's a sophomore jump, like we've been saying on the show. And I'm convinced that Pete listens each and every week, just based off of that. But a guy that we're making that jump, that sophomore jump, I mean, it's Boye Mafia. And I know everybody's talking about him, but you have to. He's making that sort of impact and that sort of leap, it seems.
For the amount of time that we've seen him in the preseason too. And we saw in this past game against the Cowboys, early pressure that made the quarterback, Cooper Rush, dump it off earlier than he wanted. Then he got in there for a batted pass. Plus he had 2 tackles, both were for stops. So he had that too. And then I think he had 1 quarterback hit and 3 quarterback pressures total. Just in the short period of time that he was on the field.
That's right. And then you compare that with the week in preseason week 1, and you start stacking those together, plus all of the reports that we're hearing from practice, and it's showing a level of consistency that makes one believe that this is the Boye Mafia that we will see this year, opposite of Nwosu, with Draymond bringing the pressure up the middle, and all of a sudden you got a stew. Like, this is awesome.
Yeah, and sticking on the topic of defense and defensive line, mentioned Mafe with the 4 total pressures. The other guy with 4 pressures on the day, and I know this will make Clinton Bonner really happy, friend of the show, Miles Adams, 4 pressures, 1 sack, and 3 hurries on the quarterback.
And he had a couple nice run plays as well, like not making the tackle, but filling his gap, getting penetration up the field, making the back bounce it outside. Miles Adams had a very nice game, and that was really cool to see, especially for a guy who's supposedly undersized for the position. It seems like he don't care. He just makes it happen, and that's awesome. Another guy from the interior, we had Reed making his first sack here as he's come back as a Seahawk, and that was really cool to see. just whipped the hell out of the offensive lineman on that play. That was awesome.
And it was on a big third down play too. So it helps get the defense. Did it help get the defense off the field, or did it make the Cowboys settle for a field goal? I can't remember, but it was a big third down stop, and it was nice to see. I like to see playmakers on defense on third down.
That's right. Now, the one thing that was a little meh overall for the day for me, Brandon, was the run defense. Some very good run plays where they all fit their gaps nicely and were able to keep the back in that 2 to 3 yard range. And then they did just get gashed on a few that were, 8, 9, 10, 12 yards. You're just like, dang it, man. Like, okay, one of those, cool. But you start getting 3 or 4 of those, it's like, gosh darn it. So yeah, a little hit or miss in the run defense.
I'll take that though. I feel like, and maybe you don't want to take it when it's preseason, but once again, they held a team under 100 yards rushing on a day where their quarterbacks were Cooper Rush and Will Grier. The Cowboys wanted to run the ball, and they got out for a couple, like the first run of the game was 9 yards. And then they were able to run it for a first down on the second one. So it felt like it was getting off to a bad start. But then when you look at the final stats of the day, when you look at the final score of the day, when you look at the rushing yards, you go, oh, well, they had a couple where they got away and bounced it outside and didn't set the edge. But overall, I feel like that could be acceptable if that's what carries on into the regular season.
Yeah, if the end result is under 100 yards a game, that would be a massive improvement for the defense. And you're right. I should have, instead of saying that it was meh for me, be like, it was meh for me, but I will take meh all day.
Right.
Compared to the dumpster fire that was last year. So, and that's also without Bobby out there. And, you hear Jamal Adams might be getting back out on the field here shortly. So without him out there, it sounds like Brooks is getting close too. So having him back out there with being a tackling machine that he is, that'd be cool. So yeah, it's you got to understand that there is a lot of moving parts out there with a lot of different dudes coming in and out. And so you can't expect the consistency that maybe you'd hope for in the regular season.
As good as the Jamal Adams news is that he could be coming back, prior to or around week 4 of the season, the Jackson Smith and Jigma news wasn't great. That he had his, quote, slight fracture of his left wrist. And it could be 3 to 4 weeks, according to Pete Carroll, which means it's probably 5 to 7 weeks.
Yeah, that was massively disappointing to hear because I didn't notice him get hurt throughout that game, right? That was one of those things that I hear about it on Tuesday. He didn't
get up holding his wrist or anything.
Yeah, I find out on Tuesday. I'm like, wait, what? When? I didn't see that at all. And yeah, Brandon, that's one of the things that coming out of this game and hearing the press conferences that is starting to get concerning. This team is already banged up. I mean, think about it. Both of your top draft picks still are out and are going to continue to be out. They asked Pete about Devin Witherspoon, and he's like, yeah, he's running straight now in short bursts. And so, yeah, that's going to be a minute. And you're like, wait, what? Like, that's taken longer than you'd hope. And doesn't sound like it's very optimistic that he'll be back for week 1. And then Mike Moe is out with a shoulder situation. Cam Young apparently had a procedure, quote unquote, like whatever that means.
And we haven't even seen him this preseason.
Right. Derek Young sounds like he's going to need surgery for some, sports hernia abductor thing. Obviously, K9's still not out there. Jamal Adams, Brooks, like you start going down the list and Drew Lock bangs up his knee. And it's like, geez, Louise, this team is getting awfully banged up before this thing even kicks off.
Yeah, not to mention Oluwatimi, who didn't play in the game because he's got an elbow injury. Kenny McIntosh, who we only saw in the mock game for a few plays before he got hurt. It's a long list of dudes.
Right. And our number one thing as we go through the beginning of the season here through training camp and the preseason, it's always no injuries, please, no injuries. Like that's our number one thing. And geez Louise, it does feel like they're getting hit, relatively hard early on here. Now, the cool thing is that in these 2 preseason games is that we've seen that the Seahawks have a little better depth than maybe they have in the last couple of years. And their 2s and 3s are definitely dominating in comparison to our opponents.
And that's what helps lead to these victories, obviously, with the twos being able to put some extra points up on the board, whether it's Drew Lock, him going 5 for 6 and having that long near touchdown pass to JSN, and then able to continue that, keeping it going in the fourth quarter. And we saw some fun things again from Holton Ahlers.
He's not boring.
He's fun.
Yeah.
And it's enough fun that you wonder if he's the type of guy where you could see them finding packages for him, because now with the rule that you can dress your third quarterback, although I suppose you can't throw him in there as a package player if he's your designated third QB.
I don't know.
Not sure how that would work.
Yeah.
Right. I don't even know if that's part of the rule. Like,
is
if
there
it's
a Taysom Hill loophole here? Like, is there?
Right.
Yeah, that'd be pretty cool.
As long as he doesn't line up under center. Yeah. I don't know how they would work that out.
I don't know. A lot of hard telling, not knowing right there. But yeah, Ahlers was fun. And then, Brandon, the Bobo show continues. Like, yet another week.
Whether it's special teams, whether it's in the passing game, he was out there with the first team offense in Geno Smith. Now, it was because there's no DK Metcalf. We did see Tyler Lockett for a play, but we got to see, the Geno to Bobo link. And it was a really nicely run route that allowed him to get open for a big gain.
Yeah, he really did have two nice routes where he was able to get behind the defender. And I watch him run these routes and I'm like, how are these corners falling for this nonsense? Like, he's so slow, but yet somehow is just elusive enough. And there must be some subtleties there within the way that he runs routes. It's really confusing to dudes. But I mean, Brandon, should we be saying that Bobo's going to be the JSN replacement until he comes back and gets healthy?
We might need to go further down the depth chart too with some of these other receivers, because we did see some nice performances, not just from Jake Bobo at receiver. And, you talk about an area where we might need depth. Derek Young, if he's struggling to catch and if he's struggling to stay healthy, then are we going to see guys like Tyjon Lindsey, who had a pretty nice game?
Oh, he did. He had that nice return. Now with Derek, I don't think he suddenly forgot how to catch this week. I think that a lot of those balls were kind of out away from his body where he had to reach up or reach out quite a ways. And if you think about it, if you've ever had a rib injury and you try to reach to the sky or reach way out to the side or something like that, you want to kill yourself immediately. Like, it doesn't feel good in any way.
No, and so you hope that he can get healthy too. But
Cody Thompson seems to be hurt.
We did see a little bit from him, but maybe we're going tight end heavy. Yeah, they went with the tight end heavy package to start the game. Got all three of those guys out there. And actually, I thought Will Dissly had a heck of a game with that early catch for the first down early on. He laid the lead block on, or he had the necessary block for DJ Dallas to get into the end zone. Going back to that play by Charbonnet, the offensive line blocking on that play in particular was really impressive. Phil Haynes, he was able to get just enough of so the nose tackle was in between Haynes and center Evan Brown. And Haynes was able to get just enough of a punch on the nose tackle that Evan Brown was then able to seal him off and make that lane between Abe Lucas and Evan Brown. And then you had Phil Haynes going into the second level, laying a block, and that was really what helped spring it open. I think Cross pushed Damian Lewis to the ground, and it tripped up another one of the linebackers at the second level, and that's one of the reasons he was able to pick up 30 yards. But yeah, it was a nice little crease that he was able to punch it through, and that was probably the biggest run on the day for the Seahawks.
Yeah, that and Sir Roderick, he had the nice run late in the game that was a third and forever
where he bounced it out. Yeah, it was a give-up play. It was a third and forever give-up play, and Sir Roderick bounced it outside. I think it ended up going only because didn't they bring it back because he stepped out of bounds a little bit early?
Yeah, he still had the first down, but it wasn't quite as long as it looked in real time, yes.
Yeah, he got it like 3 yards past instead of 13 or whatever it was.
Right.
Officiating in this game.
There was the present?
Pete Carroll won a challenge.
Again, even a blind squirrel finds it out once in a while, right? Like, it happens now and then.
I just figured they would call it go with the call on the field out of spite because Pete was challenging it, but maybe they give him those in the preseason.
Yeah, well, they want to give him a false sense of hope and security, right? So that's
and then they had that 1 4th and 1 where they brought out the chains and it was
2 yards short.
short.
It's like, all right, thank God we brought out the chains. I think they wanted the measurement just for the extra time, the coaching staff. I think McCarthy and those folks. So yeah.
Well, if you could just call for a measurement anytime you want to give your guys an opportunity to get a player. Well, and then they ended up not even going for it. So
yeah, exactly. I was kind of rooting for that, but cool to beat the Cowboys though. I can't stand that team. Still can't stand that team. And it was nice to get the dub there. And despite the JSN loss, nothing that's catastrophic injury wise, right? It's not like it sounds like he's going to be out for the season or anything like that. Hopefully just that sound like that 3 to 4 week time frame was a little optimistic. We'll see. Unless the Philadelphia surgeons can be magic. I hope they are.
Right.
Yeah.
And maybe it's just a tiny fracture. I don't know what that means necessarily, but maybe the tiny bones heal faster.
I don't think that's how that works. I really don't, but maybe it does. I have no idea.
I just don't know how you get to 3 to 4 weeks for a broken bone, but
a lot of hard telling, not knowing when it comes to that stuff. I mean, both of our doctorates are still in the mail, so.
You'd think by now, having podcasted for 10 plus years, that the sports injury
vernacular and TV diagnosis,
we would have that figured out.
Yeah, you'd think so. Although I'm just going to take the Pete Carroll approach from here on out. When I see a guy go down, I'm just going to look at it and say groin.
Knee. Yeah.
Yeah. In the press conference, they kept asking about guys. He's like, yeah, I don't know, groin. And then he was like, no, I don't really know. I just was guessing. And then he pulled that one out 2-3 more times.
One guy that we didn't talk a whole lot about yet, Levi Bell. And
Sure.
The reason why I want to talk about Levi Bell is he had a pretty good game there on the edge. I think he was playing a little bit opposite of Boye Mafe. But it was fun to hear Michael Bennett crush on Levi Bell like many of us fans develop a preseason crush on a player. And I could tell just the way that Michael Bennett was talking about Levi Bell, Michael Bennett has a preseason crush too.
He surely does. We all have it. It happens. It's a summertime fling. It's just one of those things that seeps into your life that you can't block out. Now, it was fun-ish to see him at fullback, but also I can't be having that because that means Ballore wouldn't be our fullback, and Ballore is a national treasure, and he should forever be on this team, and I don't want to see anybody threaten his job.
I don't think he's a threat. Or I don't think there's anybody who can threaten him because he's that type of person.
That was one fullback snap in that game, and it didn't go to Nick Ballore.
Well, Ballore was out. Does he have an injury too?
I don't know.
Or is he just resting? He didn't play.
Probably just resting. He's old like us, so.
Yeah, he's one of those veterans that just gets rest. Like DK Metcalf.
He doesn't need to go out there in the preseason and practice sitting on the bench.
Bobby Wagner. We don't need to see him in the preseason either.
No, negative.
Other than the shots of him on the sidelines, those are fine.
Yeah, those are fun.
I like those.
Yeah.
With the way that Drew Lock has played in these first 2 preseason games, do you think that the narrative is different if he would have put these types of games together last year?
The narrative would be different. No.
Well, I just mean okay, right now, Geno Smith is this team's quarterback.
Mm-hmm.
And Drew, I don't even get a sense that there's anything that Drew could do in the preseason that would make the coaching staff say, oh, well, maybe we should consider Drew at quarterback instead of Geno. I think Geno's got his spot locked up. Only injury can take it away, or a really bad stretch of play in the regular season. I just wonder, with the way that Drew has played in these 2 preseason games, if he would have shown us and done some of the things, I'm thinking of that throw to JSN too in the game that was nearly a touchdown, perfectly placed ball. If he would have put together these back-to-back performances in the preseason last year, I just wonder if things would have gone a little bit different.
No, and I'll tell you why. So he was already doing it last year. his first game in the preseason was a good game. It was exciting. He had a couple of really nice throws in that game. I know I was fired up about it. And then he was supposed to get the start. Was it preseason week 3 or 2, whichever one it was, that he got COVID and didn't get to shine, right? So let's say he had gone out and actually played in that COVID game and played like he has this year in the preseason. It sounds like Geno had really, taken the reins of that job almost when he walked into the building at the beginning of last year, knowing that this was his opportunity and all that. And then let us not forget how hard Pete Carroll is crushing on Geno. He loves Geno. So Geno would have gotten the opportunity first, no matter what, I think, unless Drew had gone out there and looked like Patrick Mahomes, and Joe Montana combined. I think that he would have been sitting behind Geno, and then Geno would have had the season that he had, and Drew would have never seen the field. So I don't know that the narrative changes at all.
And maybe I'm just thinking in terms of how fans perceive the quarterback battle.
I see that.
Because I already get the sense that there's people that after seeing Drew in the preseason are thinking to themselves, well, maybe we've got something there with Drew too. And maybe it's just part of that. Gosh, how do you put it? Part of it is Geno's age and having gone through multiple teams. I think there's just more of a sense of unknown, and with a younger quarterback with Drew, maybe a longer future, that people gravitate toward that direction instead.
I think that the arm talent for Drew Lock is more exciting, even though Geno has plenty of arm talent, but Drew's just got that plus arm, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, all right, the people that are down on Geno, they're always going to be down on Geno. There's nothing that he's going to be able to do because, oh my gosh, he's 31 years old. He might as well hang up his spurs now. How can he possibly have a successful 5, 6, 7 years here? Which is about all you get out of these quarterbacks anyways, for the most part. I mean, the guys that stick around for 10, 15 years, that's rarer than it is common. And I genuinely don't understand the hesitance to put your arms around Geno Smith after what he did last year. And you say, well, he bounced around from team to team to team. Okay, cool. He couldn't beat out Eli, Hall of Famer. He couldn't beat out Phillip Rivers, Hall of Famer. Couldn't beat out Russ, Hall of Famer. Yeah, stunned. That's not anything that he did wrong. He went out there, perfected his craft, got his opportunity, and kicked ass. And now he's kicking ass again. And the cool part is that now we have Drew, who's in the same position that Geno was, and he's got Geno to help him through it and show him the way. I mean, Geno's the Mandalorian. He's looking at Drew and being like, this is the way.
I think it is I think Geno is a fun story too. I don't know where to separate some of the Geno performances from the bad defensive performances last season. The defense was so bad last year. How many more potential comeback victories does Geno actually have last year if the defense doesn't play so poorly? And if that were the case, I think people would view him differently. Yes, he got comeback victories last season. I think he had 3. But would it have been 5 or 6? And I just think we'd look at Geno a whole lot differently if it were those kind of numbers last year. And I don't have a way to necessarily separate it or show people just based off of the bad defensive performances.
Right. And there's definitely a group of fans, and sometimes they're just newer fans and that sort of thing. And that's totally fine. I get it, that view football through the lens of it's Mahomes versus Burrow. It's Allen versus Tua. It's, Herbert versus Russ or whatever, right? It's the quarterback does this, the quarterback does that. This is such a bigger team game than it is that just at the quarterback position. Now, is the quarterback position the most influential on the field? Yes, nobody can argue otherwise. No doubt about it. But you say, if the defense had played a little bit better, would that have made a difference? Hell yeah. We would have won at least 3 of those NFC South games that we lost for no effing reason because the defense couldn't stop a cold. that's what's frustrating. And it's like, I can't get down on Geno for not having the extra, quote, comeback wins in those games because the defense let him down. It's very easy for me to see where the problems were last year or the massive problems were on this team. Geno's play was at best above average, top 10 QB type quarterback play, top 5 QB, the bottom end of the top 5. And then at worst, mediocre. That was Geno Smith all year. The defense, their best was maybe 12th best defense in the league kind of play to the worst defense that's ever played ever. That was the range.
Right.
So, yeah, I can't. I mean, if people want to hold that against Geno going into this year, then more power to them. And I guess maybe they just don't see the totality that is team football.
Okay. One of the things that you mentioned, though, was the quarterback matchups, Burrow and Mahomes and Josh Allen versus whoever. If that's the way that you tend to view football, you look at the passing stat leaders from past season and say, okay, Patrick Mahomes, 41 touchdowns, 12 interceptions. Joe Burrow, 35 touchdowns, 12 interceptions. Josh Allen, 35 touchdowns, 14 interceptions. Oh, and there's Geno Smith right behind those top 3 guys with 30 touchdowns and 11 interceptions. If you're viewing the quarterback position that way and you look and compare them with those stats, I guess you would just be the type of person who would say, well, if Drew Lock were in there, then he would have those same numbers because he'd have the same components around him. And then I guess there's no way to really, you can't argue off of that point because that just goes down to how you feel about things.
Well, based off of this preseason and last year's preseason and what Pete says and what Geno says and what the teammates say, taking all of that information in totality and looking at that, I don't think there's any way that you can argue that it would be massively different with Drew Lock back there. Look, it didn't change massively from Russell freaking Wilson to Geno Smith. And that's kind of what I'm trying to get at when it comes to the team aspect of football, because it is very easy to look at the game through just the prism of the quarterbacks. And You're right. Those numbers are very comparable to the top guys in the league. And there's a lot of people too that are just, and I get being hesitant to trying to say, yep, this is a repeatable performance and I believe in it, because you hear me all the time. Once is a coincidence, twice is a trend, 3 times is the U problem. Well, he's done it for one season. Mm-hmm. Or you look at it and you say, he's done it for 18 games.
Right.
So that's way past 3 times. I know that Pete believes in him. I know his teammates believe in him. And I know that's not that same bullshit that you hear out of teams and, coming into the preseason about guys they don't really believe in. That's not what this is. Guys aren't searching for the words or half platitudes and things like that. It's like, yeah, Geno's the man. We're good.
Yeah, you can tell it's genuine, whereas you can tell when guys are going through the motions in terms of their responses to particular questions.
Geno's for real, guys, and he's not going to let go of this job anytime soon. And that is a real bummer for Drew Lock, because as Geno has pointed out, there are 2 dudes on this team that deserves to be starters, and Drew Lock is one of them. And what a luxury to have as a team. Like, instead of looking at it being like, well, maybe Drew should be playing instead of Geno. How about, shoot, if, in case of emergency break glass, we have Drew. What a luxury.
And people who really like to watch the cap, just look at the 2 quarterbacks that we got for the amount of cap space that they account for.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we probably should have given away 2 years of draft capital to trade up and go get a quarterback in this year's draft. That's what we should have done. It was really important to get that quarterback of the future.
We really should have drafted Will Levis, who looks like he's the 3rd stringer in Tennessee.
No surprise of me. No surprise of me. It doesn't look, and I don't think you can put a bow on what these guys are going to be after a couple preseason games, but CJ Stroud looks like CJ Stroud, a potentially very good quarterback behind a dog catfish offensive line that's going to get him killed If he doesn't have David Carr disease by the end of this year, I'll be surprised. And I feel bad for the kid. And then Bryce Young looks like Bryce Young. He can't throw it past 15 yards. He's not fast enough to outrun guys. And when he gets hit, it looks like he flies off the screen like in Tecmo Bowl half the time. They just look like they look.
Well, it remains to be seen what we'll see from Anthony Richardson too. But
you saw Anthony Richardson in his preseason games, right? Couple wild throws, and then a couple just, oh my God, like couldn't hit the broadside of a barn. Terrible picks or terrible decisions. Feet all over the place, off balance.
Yeah, but he's Josh Allen, reincarnate, so he'll figure it out and then be awesome.
Mm-hmm. No, that happens every time.
What are you going to be looking for in this game coming up against the Green Bay Packers? Obviously, not likely to see any starters. Maybe we'll see. I don't even know how much we'll see from Drew Lock. To be honest, it might be the Holton Ahlers show for about 3 quarters.
I'm into it. I think that'll be fun. I really want to see Miles Adams have another big game. I really want him to really solidify that spot in the rotation along the defensive line. I'm excited for that. I don't know that we'll see, Mafe, because that'd be exciting. We'll probably see Bobo again. So let's see the continuation of the Bobo evolution here. I'm excited about that.
Yeah, seeing a little bit of Bobo would be nice. Just seeing even more of the depth that, based on what we saw. You mentioned the punt return by Tyjon Lindsey. Should we see him out more on special teams? We also saw him in for, I think he had a couple catches in this game too. So, he had a couple catches. So, maybe we'll start to see more from him. I'm okay with the competition at wide receiver. It was funny. One of our listeners emailed me the high school recruits that were along with Lindsey's recruiting class, because he was like number 7 in his high school recruiting class. And the 5 names, I just remember like every dude in the top 5 was NFL caliber. It was like T. Higgins, Donovan Peoples-Jones was probably the worst of the 5.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to think of the other 3 off the top of my head.
Solid to very good ball players.
Solid dudes. And then it was some dude I'd never heard of, and then Tyjon Lindsey.
Yeah. He does look quick and shifty, and he could be great in the return game. That would be awesome. We need that extra spark in special teams. Oh, we forgot to mention about special teams. Jason Myers hit a 57-yarder. That's a big deal.
Yeah, we should talk about that and not talk about his miss.
But what?
That 57-yarder was amazing.
There's a long kick that went through the upright, Brandon, and I think that's really neat for Jason Myers. I'm very excited.
Got the team on the board first, and then, once they had their 22 points on the board, they didn't need any more points.
That's exactly right, because the 2s and 3s, better than everybody else's 2s and 3s. This team is legit deep, and it's cool to see.
Since you brought that up, I don't know if some of our 1s are better than their 2s, though, because I saw Mike Jackson.
I didn't want to talk about that either. Like, you tried to bring up kickers doing something that maybe happened or didn't, and now you're trying to talk about something else that I'm not sure I want to talk about.
I'm not sure I want to talk about Mike Jackson getting beat by Jalen Tolbert either, but I saw it with my eyeballs.
Yeah, I can't believe I forgot to bring this up. This was one of my big things that I wanted to talk about. Mike Jack had a really, really bad day. And I heard Pete a couple times be like, well, that one ball was underthrown and then he got tangled up. Well, yeah, no, that's 100% true. Fine. Okay. What about every other one?
And why were they throwing his direction on almost every third down?
Because they thought they had a matchup that they liked there. Yeah, that was alarming.
Because they did.
Yeah, clearly. Yeah, Mike Jack had a terrible day. I don't know what was going on there.
Trey Brown had a good day. So,
yeah, had a pick.
He had a stop. Whereas last week, he missed that tackle that allowed the guy to break away and get the first down. He stuck his guy this time. And that was nice to see.
Yep, on the little smoke pass there. And he blew that up. I love that. That's really cool. So, yeah. And then I did see Charles Cross get dump trucked by some second-year player named Williams.
On third down.
Yeah, and give him a sack. And I was like, oh, no. Like,
that was what led to the 57-yard field goal.
Well, see, he did it just to give Jason Myers a shine. He needed the practice. That's what Charles Cross was doing.
Charles Cross was taking the dive so that Jason Myers could shine in that moment.
Right.
That makes so much sense now.
Exactly. I'm glad we cleared that up.
I love how we have our players back in the preseason.
Oh, yeah. Now, regular season, I'm going to be mad.
All right. What do you say we get to the second half of the show?
Yeah, let's do it, bud.
Just not a lot to look forward to in that third preseason game other than to continue to say no injuries, but that hasn't worked out well for us so far to continue to chant that. So we should probably just leave that alone.
Yeah, probably. Let's just treat it like a Jason Myers missed field goal. It shall not be talked about.
Just not even talk about it. Mm-hmm. Oh, I came up with the list that it was Tyler Durden, who sent me the list of the 2017 wide receiver class. Henry Ruggs was number one. Really good receiver, not a great human.
Yes.
Donovan Peoples-Jones was number two. And then it was Devonta Smith, T. Higgins, Jerry Jeudy.
Yeah.
Two guys ahead of Tyjon Lindsey, DJ Matthews Jr. and Oliver Martin.
Maybe a diamond in the rough.
And if he's shifty and if he could play special teams, hey, we need a guy to take on the Eskridge role, especially if JSN's going to lose some time too.
Do we really need another receiver to take on the oft injured role, and just sit on the bench?
No, I suppose not.
Okay.
There's just not a lot to look forward to in preseason game 3. So I've named a couple names of guys that I kind of want to watch. Jake Bobo goes without saying. Tyjon Lindsey's name in there too. Throwing Holton Ahlers out there because we're going to end up seeing him for 3 quarters anyway. Mm-hmm. And we can see him do his impersonation of Tebow or the dude from the Saints.
Taysom Hill. Yeah.
Taysom Hill. Yeah.
Yeah. And let us forget Sir Thompson. I'm excited by him. I like the way he runs. So I do. I'd like to see him solidify at the very least a practice squad spot.
Field Goals has their list of the 53-man roster. That's kind of a nice way to lead us into that because coming out of 2 preseason games, we can run through this rather quickly and just to get another impression of what some others are thinking, particularly Mookie Alexander over there at Field Goals. On the offensive side, I think it's when you look at the quarterback spot and the running back spot, Geno Smith, Drew Lock, Ken Walker, Zach Charbonnet, Kenny McIntosh, DJ Dallas. That feels about right. Wide receiver, if they keep 6, this could be interesting. So DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett, JSN, Jake Bobo, Cody Thompson, Cade Johnson.
I don't know about Cade Johnson, but we'll see.
I don't either.
I would say, if healthy, Derek Young, I think, has a better shot than Cody Thompson because I think Derek Young's a little bit better on kickoff coverage.
And maybe there's a 4th tight end that you would pick instead of Cade Johnson too, because it's just 3 tight ends: Noah Fant, Will Dissly, Colby Parkinson.
Yeah, I'd say either they would choose more tight ends, or I guess for me personally, I would think that they would keep more corners, possibly.
They're already a little bit heavy on the defense, according to this projection, but
who's the head coach?
That's a good point.
Okay, I was checking.
Offensive line, I think we saw our starting group in this game against the Cowboys. That's going to stick. Charles Cross, Abe Lucas at the tackle spots, Damian Lewis, Phil Haynes at the guard spots, Evan Brown at center, and then your backups as Stone Forsythe, Oluwatimi, Bradford, and Curran.
Yeah, that feels right. I like that. I would completely agree with Mookie on that.
Okay, flipping over to the defense. Draymond Jones, Jaron Reed up front, Mario Edwards Jr., Cam Young, Jacob Sykes in there as an undrafted free agent, and Miles Adams.
Gotcha. Okay.
So we did see a couple nice plays from Sykes in this past game.
Oh, absolutely. I was kind of thinking like him or Perry. He's made a couple nice plays, but we'll see.
Coin flip on either one of those guys for me.
Sure.
Darrell Taylor, Nwosu, Derek Hall, Boye Mafe, Tyreek Smith, outside linebackers. That feels right.
Yeah, it does. Tyreek had a couple nice plays in the last game as well.
Bobby Wagner, Devin Bush, John Radigan, Nick Bellore, Jordan Brooks as your linebackers.
Yep, that sounds right.
We got to see starting reps from Patrick O'Connell.
Yeah, I think he has a very solid shot to end up practice squad, if not picked up by another team.
If he ends up beating out Radigan, it wouldn't shock me.
Good point. Yeah. I think Radigan's thought of as maybe a better special teamer, but yeah. I don't know.
That's true. We haven't really seen O'Connell on any big special teams plays.
Yeah.
Safeties, Quandre Diggs, Julian Love, Jamal Adams, Jarek Reed, and Jonathan Sutherland, which is a name that we didn't really talk a whole lot about in the first half of the show.
Yeah. I'd be surprised if they keep Sutherland.
Another practice squad candidate potentially, or maybe somebody snags him too. But
so they're counting Kobe as a corner.
They must be counting him as a corner. Oh yeah, Mookie's got him counted as a corner. It wouldn't shock me if Jarek Reed got cut, and really if Sutherland was ahead of Reed. I feel like I've seen more from Sutherland in the preseason than I have of Reed.
That's fair.
Reek Woolen, Devin Witherspoon, Mike Jackson, Trey Brown, Kobe Bryant as your 5 corners. And maybe you're just putting Kobe there because of the Devin Witherspoon injury, and then you have that flexibility at safety.
Yeah, I'd say that last safety, with Sutherland or however you want to count it, like I don't think they keep him, and then probably keep an extra receiver at that point, or an extra corner or something.
There's been times where they've kept like 7 receivers going into week 1. And then, well, the other thing too, to prepare people for it, and maybe we'll talk about this in the next show. A lot of times the 53-man roster comes out and you see funky things, like you'll see a veteran not make the 53, but that's because they have kind of an agreement that, hey, you're not going to be on the 53, which it sucks because then your salary is not going to be guaranteed for the full year. But essentially, we need to get this guy through. So ultimately we can slip him onto the practice squad, and then we'll bring you back and you'll be fully on the roster and you'll play with us the full year.
Yep. There's some weird machinations. And then also too, remember folks that whatever the roster is in week 1, that is not going to be the roster in week 8. It's not going to be the roster in week 16. Like, it's just, this is a fluid thing.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Special teams locked up. Jason Myers, Michael Dixon, Chris Stoll.
Yeah.
That's an important name to remember.
Is there a more important one?
That's how you know you're a fan.
Yeah.
I can think of important names among our members of the flock that we should recognize.
I think there's a couple right off the top of your head, right? Do they have a title that, say, rhymes with Schmexecutive Schmaneufer?
Executive producers DCH and Rebecca Christensen.
Yeah.
Also a thanks to Steven, who came in once again via Zelle with the $22.14 donation. Thank you, Steven.
Yeah, appreciate it, bud.
Also a thanks to Washington Fish Quest, who came in with a $5 donation on Clinton's episode of 3 In, 3 Out. Seahawks 17 with a $5 Canadian in one of our episodes saying no injuries plus 100. And also Devo Martzal with a $9.99 super chat said, great to see you guys. Appreciate what you do and love the show. Go Hawks.
Hey, go Hawks, man. Yeah, that super chat stuff when we go live, that's super neat and really does help motivate us to do those live shows, because to be honest, whether it's during a game or right after a game, it's hard to want to just hop right on the microphone and roll. So that is a huge amount of encouragement, and we appreciate you guys a ton for that.
I mean, it depends on what happens in the game. Sometimes you are super excited to hop on, and
yeah, one way or the other, right? Yeah.
It's fun getting the live interaction as well. And part of that live interaction, I do have, so some of the emojis that people use in the Discord, I've converted those over to where we can now use those in the live chat on YouTube.
Hey, sweet. That's fun.
The one part of it, though, is that you do have to join as a member on YouTube to have access to those. And I do want to run down and thank our YouTube members, because I don't think I've actually shouted them out individually, apart from maybe if they do join during a live show. But Field Goal Films, David Gilbert, RJ Taylor, Reflect the Sun, Gornish Slick, Dan J, Jorn Thiel, Amy Holmes, Leo, and Rocky Finney, and the Snail, who has been our longest tenured member on YouTube at 11 months. Going strong on. So thanks to the snail.
There we go. Yeah. One of the first to hop on when we decided to start taking YouTube a little more serious.
So very cool. If you want to head on over to youtube.com/Seahawkers podcast, subscribe to the show there. That way you'll get notified when we go live. And yeah, between the live shows, between the recorded shows that get posted there, and obviously you'll get all of our stuff wherever you're subscribed, whether it is through getintheflock.com, whether just subscribing through your podcast audio app or on YouTube. Any way you want to listen to us, it absolutely, it works for us. It's all about you.
Absolutely. I mean, I'd love to make it all about me, but in this case, it really isn't. So it's all about you. Enjoy that.
And if you're traveling along I-90, make it all about Guaranteed Barbecue. Mm-hmm. Stop by his food trailer, Kellogg, Idaho, and mention the Little Flockers discount. Garen gives you 12% off.
That's right. And then you get to stuff your face with amazing barbecue. So
yeah. And then you'll probably just want to give him the money that you saved back to him because it's so awesome.
If you didn't, I'd be surprised. It's that good.
We're getting into Pick'em season here soon. Head on over to SeahawkersPodcast.com. Click the Pick'em League link at the top of the page and make sure you get your team name registered here for the upcoming season.
Yep, that's going to be fun. I'm going to pretend to start to do it and then fall out by about week 4 like I always do. But the rest of you guys, that means just one less jerk face in there to try to steal the prize away from you guys. So a lot of cool prizes again this year. And looking forward to having you guys all in there. And I'm looking forward to competing until I can't remember to do it. So it'll be fun.
It'll be the first time that you go on a weekend job to the mill.
Yep.
You'll still forget to send me your picks anyway.
Yep.
And then you won't put them in for the rest of the year, even though you don't have as much of an excuse this year as you have in previous years.
Yeah. Down to about once a month going out on mill jobs here. And that's a big thank to you guys that's happening, and a lot of cool stuff there. So looking forward to having that dwindle down even further. But I know this is going to sound weird, but sawmill guys are all up in their feels all the time, and basically transferring all this to our buddies here, other Brandon and his younger brother Keaton, transferring all the wheel grind stuff to them. When these guys call up and they say, "Hey, come out and grind the wheels," and I say, "Well, these are going to be the guys," and like, "Well, I don't know if you're not going to be there.
Why aren't you coming?
Will you come, please?
I wanted to see you."
Exactly. So then I got to go and dance like a monkey and make them happy, and then make the introduction so that next year I don't have to go on none of these. So yeah, it's happening. It's winding down, and you guys, you're a big part of that.
You know, it's no different than having a guest host on a podcast that you tune into regularly. You're like, I tuned in to hear these guys because they're the normal guys, and now there's a guy here that is not the normal guy. It's so, yeah, I think people who are listening to this show can relate to that.
Yeah, probably. I just have always been surprised at how much of a relationship business this sawmill stuff is, rather than just like show up, say a few words,
do the job,
get crap done, get dirty, leave. Like, that's the way I see it, but that's certainly not the way it is. Not even a little bit.
Not the way they roll.
No.
What do you say we get on to some do better and better at life?
All right, man. And I'm glad we are, because I need to cuss out the stupid black bear that came down out of the hills, down to our new little guest cabin / Airbnb.
Oh, no.
And tore up a screen, tried to like get in the cabin. There's no food in there either. Like, I don't know what he's thinking. He bluff charged the neighbor just before that earlier in the day. And then so to get this thing ready for Airbnb, we have a composting toilet. Like, that's how we do everything out here. And it's an outside one. And I didn't have time to build like a shack around the composting toilet. So I bought one of those privacy tents that goes over top of it. Yeah. Little bastard tore the catfish out of that.
Oh.
So yeah, he tore up my catfish tent. Now I got to go out there and build a new one. And I only have so much time because we have all of our high school friends coming out here this weekend. And unfortunately, you're in Minnesota, so you can't make it. And yes, I have to say it that way every time. You're right. And so that's stupid black bear for making my life harder this week for like no reason. Do better.
Yeah, there's not even any food. What is he doing? He's just being a dick.
Just being a dick. And I know it was a bear because Brittany went down there because I was gone. Brittany went down there and she found all his tracks all around and just like, stop being a dick.
Go find your food somewhere and leave us alone.
Yeah. All of our garbage is locked up the way that it should be. Like we don't leave stuff out, like all his food out or anything like that. Yeah. Like we're very careful to do all the things around here so that we don't contribute to making a problem bear, because more often than not, it's a people problem, you know?
Right.
But this guy's just
maybe that's why he's pissed.
Probably.
Maybe he's like, hey, all the other neighbors leave their garbage out and let me dig into it. You guys suck and protect it all like you're supposed to. Let me take it out on your tent.
That's right. This cabin down here wasn't here before. And now so you don't get a screen on that window anymore. Pokes his nose through.
A-hole.
Yeah.
My do better this week, with me being on travel, you know, there's always going to be a do better among the travel stories. That's just, I think, how it goes whenever either you or me travel.
That feels right.
Yeah. The other night, I'm in my hotel room and I hear this whirling, buzzing noise outside of my hotel. And so the way we're staying at this Great Wolf Lodge, and it has this water park inside the hotel. Our hotel balcony looks out over the water park. And like I said, I hear this noise outside. I'm like, what the heck is this buzzing noise? I walk out to my balcony and there's a freaking drone hovering outside of the hotel rooms. You would think that maybe, okay, they have a drone that takes pictures of the park or whatever for promotional material. So I sent a message down to the front desk.
Whoa.
And they're like,
whoa. I got to stop you right here. Your response was to shoot a message. I think you should have been shooting something else, man. You're a Montanan and you got a drone floating outside your window.
You think I just brought my gun into the hotel just so I could shoot down drones?
I don't know, make a bow and an arrow out of a lampshade or something. Like, figure.
That's right. Shoot first, ask questions later. No,
when it comes to drones, every time for life.
Well, what if it had like an actual, potential job? That was my main curiosity. I was like, hey, do you know that there's a drone outside of our hotel rooms that are flying like right near our windows? They're like, oh, no, the cameras are pointed up toward the ceiling. It's doing its quarterly inspection of the hotel. Mm-hmm. I'm like, oh, great. That would have been great information to, I don't know, send us before I noticed the drone flying outside. Like at this hotel, they have your number that they can text you updates like, oh, the pool's down for the next hour for a safety, like a mandatory safety break. If you have our numbers, go ahead and text us and say, oh, hey, there's a quarterly inspection going on of a drone. It's going to be flying outside of your hotel room. And if you want some privacy, maybe close your curtains. And this is what it's doing. It's not trying to, I don't know, spy on you. So again, good information that I would have liked to have. Oh, and here was the other thing they have right on the door. It says hibernation time, 11 o'clock to whatever the time is in the morning, 7 in the morning. I don't know. Yeah. No noises.
Quiet hours.
That freaking drone was outside buzzing outside the room until nearly midnight. I was not happy about it. Great Wolf Lodge, do better.
Yeah. Inspection of the ceiling. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It was flying around primarily the ceiling, but
yeah, it sounds like they were inspecting the curtains to see which ones were open so that they could see in. That's what it sounds like to me. You should have thrown a lamp at that thing.
I'll throw a shoe next time.
They know better. They should know. They should just be able to see by your registration and be like, oh, don't fly the drone by that dude, sweet. He's from Montana.
Is that not any different in Minnesota?
I have no idea.
Ask your relatives.
Well, they're all gone from there now, but yeah, it was ancestry. But here's the thing, like, because they should know, if you've ever watched a political ad for Montana, every single one features a guy shooting a TV and or a drone. Every single one.
Doesn't matter what party it is.
No,
every single one.
Yes, it's just a staple. It's in our genes. It's what we do. Yeah.
On to Better at Life.
All right, man. My Better at Life than Skip Bayless this week is for Come On Sports Fishing down in Shelter Cove, California. This last weekend, my dad and I, we went on a fishing trip together out on the ocean. That's the first time we've ever done that. It was really fun. We had a great trip. And Captain Jared, who runs the thing, he's awesome, man. He got us out there. We caught a crap ton of fish. Like the amount of fish that I brought back, Brittany was just kind of beside herself. She's like, seriously, what am I supposed to do with this much fish? I don't know. I'm giving fish away, like all that. But that's because they did such a great job of getting us out on the water and getting us into the fish. And let me tell you how much I know about fishing, Brandon. Jack, catfish. I don't know anything about fishing. I've never been into fishing. And even with that, Captain Jared and his dad, Rodney, who was out there as the deckhand helping out and everything, he got us all figured out, got me untangled when I screwed things up, got the fish out and off the line, got me out on the ocean without me freaking out, because we all know how much I like being out on the ocean. Yep. They kept everything good and copacetic. Awesome dudes. Sweet time. So if you ever want to do a little bit of offshore fishing there, go down to Shelter Cove in California. Come on, sports fishing. Talk to Captain Jared. And prices are reasonable. Good time. Lots of fish. I highly recommend it. Those guys, better at life than Skip Bayless.
Man, I might have to come back from Minnesota early so I can eat some fish. I would assume that's what's on the menu this weekend.
Yeah. So do it. That'll make everybody happy. So our group of high school friends was like 3 dudes, 3 guys, and Brandon and one of our other buddies. He's far away. He wouldn't be able to make it, but Brandon, he lives in the area. And so, all 3 gals were like, hey, is Brandon going to make it this year? And I was like, oh, no, he's going to be out in the Midwest. So I don't think he's going to make it, but I didn't know I just had to dangle a fish out there, and like a catfish blackberry, you'd come and, make a visit.
You just never know.
Yeah.
My better at life this week is for former Seahawks cornerback Richard Sherman. And we talked about it toward the top of the show with his interview with Pete Carroll. That was one of my favorite Pete Carroll interviews that I think I've heard ever. And a big part of it is, well, for one, Richard Sherman being a part of the team for so long and knowing Pete Carroll as well as he did, he knew a lot of the questions to ask Pete to make it a great interview. Part of it is just his natural talent as a broadcaster now that he's, shifting more into that realm. One of the things that hit me, though, and it did hit me around the play that shall not be talked about, because after all these years, and even immediately after the game, it really solidified in my mind, this interview with Pete, that the best way to respond, if anyone ever brings up the play that shall not be talked about, Malcolm Butler made a great play.
Yeah, we say it all the time. Yeah.
We said it all the time, but I heard it from both Pete and Richard Sherman. They're like, because they approached the topic, and both of them are like, oh, but yeah, dude made a great play. Oh, yeah, he made a great play.
Yeah.
So it was funny to hear that that's how they work through that as well. And yes. It just solidified for me that that's the way to do it. The other part of the interview, Richard asked him, when does it end for you? And I loved Pete's response. He said, I don't know. Look how much fun I'm having right now. And he's having a blast with this team.
And John's putting up with my crap. And for as long as he's willing to do that, it was great. And he was very humble throughout the whole thing.
He was. Yeah, it was a great Pete Carroll interview. It made me happy. So for Richard Sherman on the volume, the best interview that I've seen, and it just gave me that much more of an appreciation for how great of a coach that Pete Carroll is. And for that, Richard Sherman, better at life than Skip Bayless.
Yeah. And one of the things I really enjoyed about that is that Pete cussed like 3 or 4 times throughout the interview. That was fun.
Yeah.
I enjoyed that very much.
Drop some S-bombs.
Yeah. It like in the flow, you can tell this is part of his natural vernacular, right? And then I think one of the more favorite things I took from that interview was when they were talking about Pete's philosophy and, how he got his guys in, with Cam, Earl, Rich, Marshawn, Russ down the list, right? Red and all those guys. And once he had his guys, then he could get them to buy in. And the way that Richard talked about it was just, how all in because they all loved the game so much. Like it was 140,000%, like just in it. And he said that was their greatest asset. And then when he talked about what had happened in, the second Super Bowl, how that because you're all in, a lot like when you're in love, like you're just all the way in, that when it ends, you're heartbroken. And that's how he put it. Like they were literally heartbroken. And that was the reason why that all kind of fell apart there. Even though, they still managed to perform at a pretty high level for the most part. That was a great way to put that. And I hadn't really thought about it in those terms. I just kind of thought about it more like Pete didn't really give him a good enough explanation and they were pissed. Like that's always how I had thought about it. So I thought that was interesting.
It was good to get that perspective too. I tried not to pay that much attention to that part of the interview. It was cool though when Sherm mentioned the all-decade team and mentioned him and was it him, Cam, Bobby, Marshawn, and Pete were the five, and Pete said, "Oh yeah, that's a good group."
Yeah, it's a pretty good group.
And I think with that,
there's only one thing left to say:
Go Hawks!
Go Hawks!